I'm Timothy, 29 male. I live in a modest two-bedroom apartment with my fiancée, Sarah, and I work as a financial analyst for a mid-sized firm, a job that's more about spreadsheets than stock market thrills. For the last decade, my life was defined by stability, a good job, a great partner, and a tight-knit circle of friends I'd known since college. But I'm here to tell you how that stability was a carefully constructed illusion, shattered by the one person I trusted most in the world, and how a digital ghost from the past gave me the power to reclaim my life. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Friendship, real friendship, feels permanent. It feels like bedrock. That's what I had with Jessica. We met on the first day of freshman orientation in college, two nervous kids trying to find the right lecture hall. We bonded over a shared sense of humor and an identical terrible taste in instant noodles. For 10 years, she wasn't just a friend, she was family. She was the person I called after a bad day at my first internship, the one who helped me move into 3 different apartments, and the one who stood beside me with a triumphant grin when I first introduced Sarah as my girlfriend. Our friend group was an extension of that bond. There was Ben, a quiet genius who could build a computer from spare parts but couldn't make small talk to save his life. There was Sarah, my Sarah, the creative heart of the group, a graphic designer who saw the world in color palettes and fonts, and a few others who orbited our core. We were inseparable. We did everything together: weekly dinners, summer road trips, holiday parties. We built our adult lives in parallel, celebrating each other's promotions, engagements, and minor victories. At the center of it all, financially at least, was Jessica. After college, she got her licenses and became a financial advisor. She was brilliant with money, or so we all thought. She had this incredible ability to explain complex market trends in simple, exciting terms. She was confident, charismatic, and persuasive. About 3 years ago, she came to us with an idea. She was starting a small, private investment club for a few exclusive clients and wanted to offer us a chance to get in on the ground floor. "Look, guys," she'd said, sitting in my living room with a professionally printed prospectus, "this is friends and family only. I'm using a proprietary algorithm to target emerging markets. The buy-in is low, but the potential returns are huge. I want my favorite people to benefit before I take this public." It sounded incredible. We all had savings accounts earning next to nothing. The idea of our money actually working for us, guided by someone we trusted implicitly, was intoxicating. I was a financial analyst myself, but my work was in corporate risk assessment, a different universe from the high-stakes trading Jessica described. I looked over her paperwork. It seemed legitimate, if a bit ambitious. The fund was named Apex Investors, which sounded exactly like something Jessica would come up with. We all invested, not huge amounts at first, but significant enough. Ben put in a portion of his signing bonus from his new tech job. Sarah invested some money she'd inherited. I put in a healthy chunk of my own savings, the money I was slowly building for an engagement ring. The trust wasn't even a question. This was Jessica. She would sooner cut off her own arm than hurt one of us. For 2 years, everything was perfect. The quarterly statements she sent were beautiful, showing consistent, impressive gains. Our initial investments grew. When the market dipped, Apex investors barely seemed to notice. "My algorithm hedges against volatility," she'd explain with a confident wave of her hand. We were all thrilled. Some friends even invested more. Jessica became the group's financial guru, the one we all looked to for advice. She'd upgraded her car, moved into a slick downtown condo, and always picked up the most expensive rounds at the bar. We saw her success as our success. We were all rising together. When I finally proposed to Sarah, Jessica was the first person I told. She shrieked with joy and immediately started planning the engagement party. "It has to be perfect," she insisted. "Leave everything to me, my gift to you both." And it was perfect. She booked the rooftop bar of a boutique hotel, a place with sparkling city views and even more sparkling champagne. She decurated every detail from the music to the canapes. As I stood there that night, surrounded by everyone I loved, with Sarah's hand in mine, I felt like the luckiest man alive. My fiancée was beautiful, my future was bright, and my friends were the best anyone could ask for. I looked over at Jessica, who was beaming at us from across the room, and felt a surge of gratitude. She was the architect of so much of our happiness, the steadfast pillar of our group. I had no idea that the foundation she'd built for us was a house of cards, and she was about to set it on fire. The bedrock of our friendship was about to crumble into dust, and I was standing right at the epicenter. The party was in full swing. The city lights twinkled below us, a perfect backdrop to the laughter and chatter filling the rooftop space. Sarah was radiant, moving through clusters of our friends and family, her smile lighting up the entire venue. I felt a deep, profound sense of peace. This was it. This was the beginning of the rest of my life. I just finished a conversation with Sarah's parents, who were wonderfully warm and welcoming, when I saw Jessica step up to the small, makeshift stage where a jazz trio had been playing. She tapped a champagne flute with a spoon, the clear, ringing sound cutting through the ambient noise. "If I could have everyone's attention, please," she said, her voice amplified slightly by the microphone. A hush fell over the crowd. She had a magnetic presence. When Jessica spoke, people listened. She smiled, a wide, dazzling smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I just thought it was the emotion of the moment. "I want to propose a toast," she began, raising her glass. "To Timothy and Sarah, two of the most wonderful people I have ever known. I've watched their love story from the very beginning, and it's been one of the great joys of my life to see them find such happiness together." People smiled and murmured in agreement. Sarah squeezed my hand, her eyes shining. I felt a lump forming in my throat. This was my best friend, my sister in all but blood, celebrating my greatest joy. "Timothy and I," she continued, her gaze locking onto mine, "have been friends for a decade. We've built our lives on a foundation of trust. We've shared secrets, dreams, and even financial futures." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. The atmosphere shifted almost imperceptibly. Her tone had changed, losing its warmth and gaining a sharp, metallic edge. "That's why it is with the heaviest heart," she said, her voice cracking with what I thought was emotion but now realized was performance, "that I have to share some devastating news. As many of you know, I manage an investment fund that holds the savings of many people in this room. Our dear friends, our family." A nervous ripple went through the guests. What was she doing? This wasn't the time or place. I shot her a confused look, trying to catch her eye, but she was looking out at the crowd, her face a mask of sorrow. "Over the past few months," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "I noticed some irregularities, missing funds, trades that I couldn't account for. I hired a forensic accountant, hoping, praying it was a mistake, a glitch in the system." She took a deep, shuddering breath. It wasn't. My blood ran cold. I could feel Sarah's hand tighten on mine. This felt like a nightmare. Why was she doing this now? "The investigation traced the unauthorized withdrawals and fraudulent trades back to a single source," Jessica announced, her voice rising with theatrical indignation. Her eyes finally met mine, and they were filled with a cold, accusatory fire. "They traced it all back to the one person besides myself who had administrative access to the accounts, my best friend, my business partner." She pointed her champagne flute directly at me. "They traced it to Timothy." The world stopped. A collective gasp sucked the air from the rooftop. Every single eye turned to me. I saw confusion, disbelief, and then on some faces the slow, dawning horror of suspicion. Sarah's parents were staring at me, their warm expressions from minutes ago replaced with shock and distrust. My own parents looked bewildered. What are you talking about?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. My mind was a frantic blank slate. This had to be a joke. A sick, twisted, horrible joke. "Don't play dumb, Timothy," Jessica sneered, the mask of sadness vanishing, replaced by pure venom. "You stole from us. You stole from Ben. You stole from your own fiancé's family. You stole from everyone who trusted you. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" The accusations hung in the air, thick and suffocating. People started murmuring, whispers spreading through the crowd like a virus. I could see the calculation in their eyes as they remembered the new watch I'd bought, the cost of the engagement ring on Sarah's finger. Normal life expenses were suddenly being recontextualized as evidence of my guilt. "Jessica, that's insane." I finally found my voice, taking a step forward. "I haven't touched anything, you know that." "He's lying," Jessica cried out to the audience. "He's been siphoning money for months to pay for this. This party, the ring, he's a thief, and he used my trust and all of your trust to fund his lifestyle." It was a character assassination, executed with surgical precision in front of everyone I cared about. I was speechless. How do you defend yourself against a lie so huge, so audacious? Every denial sounded weak, every protestation sounded like the desperate plea of a guilty man. Sarah was standing by my side, her face pale. "Jessica, stop it, this isn't true," she yelled, but her voice was drowned out by the rising tide of chaos. Ben was looking at me, his expression unreadable. Other friends looked away, unable to meet my eyes. In the span of a single champagne toast, Jessica had tried, convicted, and sentenced me. She had destroyed my reputation, my friendships, and my future. I felt a wave of nausea and humiliation so profound it buckled my knees. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just had to get out of there. I turned, pulling Sarah with me, and pushed my way through the crowd of stunned, accusing faces. I fled my own engagement party, not as a groom-to-be, but as a branded criminal, leaving the smoldering ruins of my life behind me. The sound of Jessica's voice, now feigning sobs and accepting condolences, followed me all the way to the elevator. The doors slid shut, and I was finally left in silence, with nothing but the reflection of a broken man staring back at me. The days that followed the party were a blur of shame and isolation. My phone, which once buzzed constantly with messages from friends, was silent. The only calls I got were from angry investors, our friends demanding to know where their money was. Each conversation was a fresh wave of agony. I tried to explain, to reason, to plead my innocence, but my words were useless against the story Jessica had so masterfully crafted. She had positioned herself as the betrayed victim, the diligent protector of their funds who had uncovered a monstrous betrayal. She sent them all a carefully redacted report from her forensic accountant that seemed to confirm her story. I was a pariah. I stopped leaving the apartment. The world outside felt hostile, every stranger's glance a potential accusation. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, replaying Jessica's toast over and over in my head, the words like acid eating away at my sense of self. How could this have happened? How could a decade of friendship evaporate in a single moment? The only light in that suffocating darkness was Sarah. She never doubted me, not for a second. While everyone else had abandoned me, she became my anchor, my defender, and my detective. "We're going to fight this, Timothy," she said, her voice fierce with a conviction I couldn't muster for myself. "She's not going to get away with this. There has to be proof." But what proof? My access to the Apex Investors portal had been revoked. My work emails were a dead end. Jessica had every document, every record. I was a financial analyst, and yet I had no data to analyze. My own professional skills were useless. The feeling of helplessness was crushing. One evening, about a week after the disaster, Sarah was trying to get me to eat something when she had an idea. "What about your old backups?" she asked. "That external hard drive you used to use for your old laptop. You were always so paranoid about losing files, you must have saved something." It felt like a long shot. The hard drive had been sitting in a desk drawer for years, a relic from a laptop that had died long ago. I hadn't touched it since before Apex Investors was even a thing. But it was something, a sliver of hope. I dug it out, a small, silver rectangle covered in a thin layer of dust. I plugged it into my current laptop, my heart pounding with a strange mix of hope and dread. The drive whirred to life. I clicked through old folders filled with college essays, awkward photos, and outdated resumes. It felt like digging through a time capsule of my own life. I found a folder labeled Miss Comms, a digital junk drawer where I'd occasionally saved old chat histories from various messaging apps that had long since gone defunct. I almost clicked past it, but something made me pause. There was a file named with a string of numbers and the name of a messaging program we all used in college and for a few years after. It was an app that allowed you to save your entire chat history as a simple text file. I opened it. It was a massive, sprawling log of my conversations with Jessica dating back years. I started scrolling, my eyes glazing over thousands of lines of inside jokes, mundane plans, and heartfelt confessions. It was a transcript of our friendship. I used the search function, typing in Apex and fund, but found nothing. Of course not. This backup was from before the fund existed. Disappointment washed over me. It was another dead end. I was about to close the file when I decided to just search for her name, Jessica, to see what would come up in group chats. The search function landed me in the middle of a conversation from 4 years ago. It wasn't with me. It was a chat log I had been a part of but had completely forgotten about, a group chat between Jessica and her ex-boyfriend, Mark, a guy she dated for a few months after college. I had been added to the chat briefly during some argument they were having, which was why it was saved on my log. I remember them fighting constantly about money. I read the exchange, my breath catching in my chest. "Mark, you can't keep doing this, Jess. You lost the money from your dad's account, all of it." "Jessica, it was a bad trade. I can make it back. I have a new system." "Mark, it's not a system, it's a gamble. You're using new money to pay off old losses. That's not investing, you know what that is." "Jessica, shut up, don't you dare say that. I just need a little more capital to get back on track. I just need more investors." "Mark, I'm done. I can't watch you do this. This is going to blow up in your face." My hands started to shake. I scrolled down, my eyes flying across the text. The conversation continued, a frantic, desperate argument, and then I saw it. The sentence that changed everything, the ghost in the machine. "Jessica, I don't have a choice. I'm in too deep. I've been covering the losses for over a year. The only way out is to get more people in, keep it moving." As long as the quarterly reports look good, no one will ever know. It's the only way to stay afloat. It wasn't just a confession, it was a blueprint, a Ponzi scheme. She had been running a scam long before Apex Investors even started. She'd lost her initial capital and had been using our money, her friends' money, to cover her tracks and pay out fake returns ever since. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. She hadn't just framed me to cover a few bad trades. She had framed me because her entire fraudulent empire was on the verge of collapsing, and she needed a scapegoat to take the fall. My public humiliation was her escape plan. I stared at the screen at the glowing text that held the truth. The world, which had been gray and blurry, snapped into sharp, terrifying focus. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. This was about justice. The despair that had crippled me for a week solidified into something cold, hard, and resolute. She thought she had buried me. She had no idea she'd just handed me the shovel. The shock of finding the chat log quickly gave way to a cold, razor-sharp clarity. For the first time in a week, the suffocating fog of despair lifted, replaced by the icy resolve of purpose. I called Sarah into the room, my voice steady and low. I turned the laptop screen towards her and pointed at the incriminating lines of text. I watched her eyes scan the words, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror and then to a fierce, protective anger that mirrored my own. "She's been doing this for years," I said, the words tasting like poison. "Apex Investors was never real, it was just a new name for an old scam. We weren't her friends, we were her marks, her exit strategy." Sarah put her hand on my shoulder, her touch grounding me. "Okay," she said, her voice firm. "Okay, this is it, this is what we needed. But a 4-year-old chat log isn't enough on its own. She'll say it's fake. She'll say Mark was a bitter ex. We need more. We need to prove this is still happening now." She was right, the chat log was the key, but we needed the door it would unlock. We spent the rest of the night hunched over the laptop, a makeshift command center in our dimly lit living room. Our first call was to Ben. It was a risky move. Ben was methodical, logical, and deeply loyal. He was also one of the people who had gone completely silent on me. Calling him felt like stepping into a minefield. I messaged him, keeping it simple. "I have something you need to see. It's about the fund. I can prove I'm innocent. Please, Ben, as a friend." The 3 dots indicating he was typing appeared and disappeared for what felt like an eternity. Finally, a reply. "Fine, send it." We sent him a screenshot of the chat log, blacking out the more personal insults between Jessica and her ex, focusing only on the financial confession. The silence that followed was even more agonizing. Then my phone rang. It was Ben. "Is this real?" he asked, his voice strained. "Yes," I said. "It's from an old backup. I was in the group chat for an hour, so it's saved to my history. That's all I have, Ben, but I know it's the truth." "A text file can be edited," he said, the engineer in him kicking in. "But the syntax, the timestamps, they look consistent with the old platform's log format. I'd need to see the raw file, but if this is legitimate," he trailed off, and I could hear the gears turning in his head. "She told me my returns last quarter were 12%. The S&P was down 4% in the same period. I thought she was a genius." "She's not a genius, Ben. She's a con artist," I said quietly, "and she's using our money to pay for it." That was all it took. The logic of the lie was undeniable to someone like Ben. "Okay," he said, his voice now hard. "I'm in. What do you need?" Ben's involvement changed everything. He was a software engineer with a specialization in data security. While Sarah and I were amateurs, Ben knew exactly where to look. He explained that if Jessica was running a Ponzi scheme, she wouldn't be using the standard, heavily audited brokerage platforms. She'd be using a series of smaller, less secure systems, likely moving money between dozens of accounts to obscure the trail. Our first objective was to find where the money was actually going. Jessica had created a slick online portal for Apex investors where we could log in and see our gains. Ben suspected it was nothing more than a facade, a website with numbers manually updated by Jessica to maintain the illusion of growth. He got to work analyzing the portal's source code. Meanwhile, Sarah used her graphic design skills for a different kind of investigation. She started digging into Jessica's social media, cross-referencing posts with public records. She found the limited liability company, LLC, under which Apex Investors was registered. It was a shell corporation registered to a post office box. But Sarah didn't stop there. She found photos from Jessica's recent business trip to the Cayman Islands, a trip she'd bragged about as a networking opportunity. In the background of one of her beach selfies, Sarah noticed the name of a small local bank on an ATM. A few hours later, Ben called us, his voice electric with excitement. "I'm in," he said. The portal's security is a joke. It's just a web template connected to a simple database. She's been logging in once a month and updating the values herself. There are no actual trades being executed through it. But he found something else. Buried in the website's backend files, he found a snippet of code that referenced an external payment processor. It was a weak link, a digital breadcrumb. He followed it, working his way through layers of mediocre security until he hit a wall, a transfer log linked to an offshore bank. The very same bank Sarah had spotted in the background of that selfie. We couldn't access the accounts themselves, but we could see the transaction records, a complex web of transfers. We saw large sums of money coming in from the accounts of our friends. We saw smaller, regular sums going out, the returns that were being paid out to early investors to keep the scheme alive. And we saw massive withdrawals to accounts under different names, likely Jessica's personal offshore accounts. Most damningly, there were no records of any significant stock or asset purchases. She wasn't investing the money at all. She was just moving it around and skimming from the top. We spent the next 48 hours piecing it all together, creating a flowchart of the money trail, linking transaction dates to the fake quarterly reports she had sent us. It was all there, undeniable mathematical proof of a multi-year fraud. As we were documenting everything, Sarah let out a gasp. She was looking at flight records. "Timothy," she said, her voice tight with urgency. She booked a one-way ticket to Dubai for next Friday. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The engagement party wasn't just about creating a scapegoat. It was a farewell performance. She was planning to drain the remaining funds, flee the country, and leave me to face the fallout and the furious investors she had created. The clock was ticking. We had 1 week to stop her. The discovery of the plane ticket lit a fire under us. Our slow, methodical investigation was now a frantic race against time. We had 7 days before Jessica disappeared, leaving a trail of financial ruin and my life in ashes. Our first instinct was to run to the police, to dump the mountain of evidence we had compiled onto a detective's desk. Ben, ever the pragmatist, immediately shot that down. "Think about it," he said over a secure video call, his face grim. We walk into a police station with a 4-year-old chat log and a bunch of illegally accessed bank transfer records from an offshore account. The first question they'll ask is how we got this. They'll launch an investigation, sure. It'll take weeks, maybe months. They'll have to file subpoenas, go through international channels. By the time they have a warrant, Jessica will be long gone. She'll have already moved the money from that bank to another one. He was right. A conventional approach was too slow. Jessica had built her life on lies, and she was an expert at talking her way out of trouble. She would deny everything, paint us as vengeful conspirators, and use the legal process to buy herself enough time to vanish. More than that, I needed our friends to know the truth. I couldn't bear the thought of my name being permanently tarnished in their minds of them. Always wondering if I was the one who had betrayed them. A quiet arrest months from now wouldn't fix that. The damage had been done publicly, and I felt strongly that the truth needed to come out the same way. "So what do we do?" Sarah asked, pacing the living room. "We can't just let her get on that plane." "We don't let her," I said, an idea beginning to form, cold and hard. "She exposed me at a party surrounded by our friends. We need to do the same to her. We need to set a trap she can't escape." The plan started to take shape over the next few hours. We knew Jessica was arrogant. Her success had been built on the belief that she was smarter than everyone else. She had successfully framed me, and as far as she was concerned, she had won. Her guard would be down. Sarah found the perfect opportunity. On Jessica's social media, she had just announced a spontaneous farewell dinner for this coming Thursday, the night before her flight. "I'm making a big career move and leaving the country," the post read, accompanied by a photo of her clinking champagne glasses with some new, wealthy-looking acquaintances. "Want to say goodbye to all my dearest friends before I go. Intimate gathering at the Grandview." The Grandview was an expensive restaurant with a private dining room she often used to impress clients. It was perfect. She was gathering our friends, her victims, in one place for us. Our plan had 3 parts: containment, presentation, and confirmation. First, containment. We needed to ensure she couldn't bolt the moment things went south. Ben contacted a mutual friend, Mark, the paralegal from our larger circle. We brought him into our confidence, showing him the core evidence. Mark was horrified but immediately understood the legal tightrope we were walking. He advised us that while we couldn't physically restrain her, we could create a situation where fleeing would be an admission of guilt. He also agreed to have a trusted contact in the local police department on standby, ready to act the moment a public confession or undeniable proof was presented. He would wait nearby the restaurant. Second, presentation. We couldn't just stand up and yell accusations. We needed to present our evidence in a way that was irrefutable and easy for a layperson to understand. Ben took the complex financial data and, with Sarah's design expertise, turned it into a clear, devastating visual presentation. They created simple graphs showing the money flowing in from investors and the complete lack of any outgoing investment activity. They mapped the transfers to her offshore accounts. They created a timeline that synced her fraudulent quarterly reports with her personal luxury purchases. The centerpiece of the presentation was the chat log. Authenticated by a digital forensics expert Ben knew who could verify its metadata without needing the original file. Third confirmation, we needed to get Jessica to confess or at least to trap herself in a lie so obvious it was tantamount to a confession. This was my role. I would be the one to confront her. I spent 2 days rehearsing, anticipating her denials, her counter-accusations, her attempts to twist the narrative. I had to remain calm, stick to the facts, and not let her manipulate the emotions of the room. The day of the dinner, the three of us met at Ben's apartment to do a final run-through. The presentation was loaded onto a small, powerful projector Ben had acquired. We had backups on multiple USB drives. We had audio recordings of my calls with the angry investors, calls where they repeated the lies Jessica had told them about me. As we prepared to leave, a wave of anxiety washed over me. What if this goes wrong? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What if they still don't believe us? Sarah took my hands. Look at me, she said, her gaze steady and unwavering. When you were at your lowest point, I believed in you. When Ben saw the proof, he believed in you. The truth is on our side, Timothy. People believe the truth when they see it clearly. You just have to be the one to show them. Ben clapped me on the shoulder. She thinks you're broken, he said. She's expecting you to be hiding in a dark room, defeated. She will not be prepared for you walking in there ready to fight. Her arrogance is her biggest weakness. Let's go use it against her. Walking towards the restaurant, I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was the calm of a man who had already lost everything and had nothing left to fear. Jessica had set the stage for my destruction at my engagement party. Tonight, we were walking onto her stage for the final act of a play she didn't even know she was in, and we were about to bring down the curtain. The private dining room at the Grandview was exactly as I'd imagined, opulent, dimly lit, and filled with the low hum of self-congratulatory chatter. Through the glass door, I could see Jessica at the head of a long table holding court. She was anim. Aided, laughing, a glass of expensive wine in her hand. Our friends, her victims, were seated around her, listening with rapt attention. They looked somber, but they were there, paying their respects to the woman who had supposedly protected them from my theft. Seeing them hang on her every word felt like a physical blow, but it also fueled the cold fire in my gut. I took a deep breath. Sarah squeezed my hand and Ben gave me a sharp, determined nod. This was it. We pushed open the door and walked in. The room fell silent, every head turned towards us. The pleasant chatter died in an instant, replaced by a thick, shocked silence. I saw a dozen different emotions on the faces of my former friends: confusion, anger, pity, guilt. Jessica's smile froze on her face, then slowly morphed into a look of utter contempt. Timothy, she said, her voice dripping with venom, I can't imagine what you think you're doing here. You are not welcome. We're not here for the food, Jessica, I said, my voice ringing out clear and steady in the silent room. We're here for the truth. Ben was already moving, walking silently to a blank wall, setting up the small projector. A few people started to protest, telling us to leave, but they were cut short by the sight of the first image flashing on the wall, the Apex Investors logo. You're all here to say goodbye to Jessica, I continued, my eyes locked on hers. She's told you she's leaving for a big career move, another great opportunity. She's always been good at selling a story, hasn't she? Jessica stood up, her face flushed with fury. Get out, I'm calling security. Go ahead, Sarah said calmly from beside me, but I think our friends might want to see this first. Ben clicked to the next slide. It was the flowchart of the money trail. A simple diagram showing money from accounts labeled Ben, Sarah, our parents, and others all flowing into one central account, and then branching out not to stocks or bonds, but to accounts in the Cayman Islands and to vendors like Luxury Auto and Downtown Realty. For 2 years, Jessica told us she was a genius investor, I said, walking slowly along the side of the table, making eye contact with each person. She showed us beautiful reports with incredible gains. The problem is those gains were never real. Not a single dollar of your money was ever invested. Whispers erupted around the table. People were looking from the screen to Jessica, confusion warring with the trust they'd placed in her. He's lying, Jessica shrieked. He's a desperate thief trying to blame me for his own crimes. He doctored those documents. Did I doctor this too? I asked. Ben clicked again. The chat log appeared on the wall, the damning conversation between her and her ex-boyfriend. The text was large enough for everyone to read. Jessica, I don't have a choice. I'm in too deep. I've been covering the losses for over a year. The only way out is to get more people in, keep it moving. As long as the quarterly reports look good, no one will ever know. The silence in the room was now absolute, heavy, and suffocating. Jessica's face went pale. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine fear in her eyes. That's fake, she stammered. Mark was a bitter ex. He would say anything to hurt me. We thought you might say that, Ben said coolly. He clicked a button on his laptop and a video file played. It was a screen recording of the digital forensics expert he'd hired. The expert explained in calm, clinical terms how the metadata of the original file proved it was authentic and hadn't been altered since the day it was created 4 years ago. Jessica was cornered. Her denials were becoming more frantic, her lies more transparent. This is ridiculous. It's a conspiracy. Timothy is a criminal who is trying to drag me down with him. Then explain this, I said, my voice dropping. I took out my phone and played one of the audio recordings. It was a call with one of our friends, a young couple who had invested their entire savings for a down payment on a house. On the recording, their voice was distraught. Jessica told us you took everything, Tim. She said you wiped out the entire account. My recorded voice replied calmly, and what day did she say this happened? The day of your engagement party, the friend replied. I stopped the recording. She told you all the money was gone, stolen by me, but here's the final piece of the puzzle. Ben brought up the last slide. It was a screenshot of a bank transfer record from the offshore account. The transfer was for over $500,000, draining the last of the investor's funds. It was a transfer to an account in Dubai. And the date of the transaction, the morning after the engagement party. She needed a scapegoat before she took the last of the money, I explained, my voice resonating with cold fury. She accused me publicly to create a smokescreen. The next more. Ning, while you were all calling me furious and betrayed, she was quietly wiring your life savings to an untraceable account. Tomorrow, she was going to get on a plane and disappear forever. The entire room was staring at Jessica now. The spell was broken, the trust had shattered. They saw her not as a victim, but as the predator she was. Her face crumpled. The arrogance, the confidence, it all melted away, leaving behind a desperate, cornered criminal. She lunged for the door, but Ben was already there, blocking her path. Just then, the door opened from the outside. 2 uniformed police officers, accompanied by Mark, stepped inside. Jessica, Mark said, his voice filled with disappointment. It's over. Jessica stared at the officers, then back at the faces of the friends she had betrayed. There was no escape. She didn't scream or fight. She just deflated, a puppet with its strings cut. The lie that had sustained her for years had finally collapsed, and it had buried her underneath it. As the officers read her rights and led her away, her eyes met mine one last time. There was no remorse in them, only hatred. Hatred for the ghost in the machine that had refused to stay buried. In the aftermath of Jessica's arrest, the silence she left behind was deafening. The initial shock among our friends gave way to a painful and complicated process of grief and anger. There were endless police interviews, financial statements to file, and lawyers to consult. The case was a slam dunk. With the evidence we provided and Jessica's transparent attempt to flee, she had no defense. She pled guilty to multiple counts of wire fraud and was sentenced to a significant prison term. Justice being served, however, didn't magically fix everything. The money was mostly gone, vanished into the labyrinth of offshore banking. Investigators were able to recover a fraction of it, but for many of our friends, their savings, their down payments, their futures were wiped out. The financial devastation was immense, and it created rifts that might never fully heal. Our friend group, once a source of unwavering support, was fractured. Some friends reached out immediately, their apologies filled with shame and regret for ever doubting me. I accepted their apologies, understanding that they too were victims of Jessica's masterful manipulation. We are slowly, carefully trying to rebuild those friendships. Others, however, couldn't face me. I think the guilt of their accusations, mixed with the shame of being so thoroughly duped, was too much. They drifted away, becoming casualties of a war they hadn't even known they were fighting. The ordeal changed me. The naive trust I once had in the permanence of friendship was gone, replaced by a more cautious, deliberate appreciation for the people I hold close. It taught me that trust is not a passive state but an active choice, one that must be earned and re-earned every day. My relationship with Sarah became the bedrock of my new reality. She had been my unwavering advocate when the entire world was against me. We had walked through fire together, and our bond, already strong, was forged into something unbreakable. A few months after Jessica's sentencing, Sarah and I got married. We canceled the extravagant venue and the long guest list. Instead, we had a small ceremony in a beautiful public garden, surrounded by immediate family and the few close friends who had weathered the storm with us. Ben was my best man. There were no grand toasts or public speeches. Just quiet vows, heartfelt promises, and the profound sense of peace that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are supposed to be, with the people who truly matter. Life is different now. It's quieter. My definition of wealth has been irrevocably altered. It's not about the numbers in a bank account or the gains on a quarterly report. It's about integrity. It's about sleeping soundly at night knowing you have been true to yourself and to the people you love. It's about the steadfast loyalty of a partner like Sarah and the quiet, dependable friendship of someone like Ben. I sometimes think about that old chat log, that digital ghost that saved me. It was a random relic from the past, a forgotten conversation that held the power to unravel a massive deception. It's a stark reminder that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of persisting. Lies are loud and they can cause incredible damage in the short term, but they are inherently unstable. Truth is quiet, patient, and permanent. My name is cleared and the villain of my story is behind bars, but this isn't a simple story of revenge. It's a story about survival and reconstruction. It's about finding out who you are and who your real friends are when the life you've built is burned to the ground. You sweep away the ashes, you salvage what you can, and you start again. And you build the new foundation on something much stronger and more valuable than money. Reachable, hard-won, and deeply cherished trust.